In tonight's episode, we're unraveling three chilling tales from across Asia, and the first takes us deep into the sweltering heart of Delhi, India, during the summer of 2001. By day, the streets were bustling, alive with markets, chatter, and the sound of rickshaw horns. The sun went down. Something else came out. It wasn't a ghost, it wasn't a known animal, and it certainly wasn't human. Eyewitnesses swore they saw a figure, part man, part monkey, leaping from rooftop to rooftop. Its eyes glowed red in the dark, its claws glinted like metal, and its speed defied logic. Victims claimed it pounced without warning, scratching and biting before vanishing into the night. Within days, an entire city was gripped by fear. Families barricaded themselves inside. Neighbors patrolled the streets with sticks. And the police? They were as baffled as everyone else. No one knew if they were hunting a monster, a criminal, or something far stranger. But one thing was certain: Delhi was under siege, and the first scream was only the beginning. It began in the cramped, winding streets of East Delhi. Rows of concrete buildings pressed tightly together, laundry strung between rooftops like makeshift flags, the air heavy with the scent of fried snacks and exhaust fumes. At night, the temperature didn't drop much, but the atmosphere changed completely. The chatter of the markets faded, replaced by the distant hum of ceiling fans and the occasional bark of a stray dog. Most families slept on their rooftops to escape the suffocating heat indoors. It was a nightly ritual, until that summer. Our story follows Arjun, a 29-year-old shopkeeper who had lived in the same neighborhood his entire life. He knew every alley, every neighbor, every shortcut home. Nothing in Delhi scared him, not the stray dogs, not the occasional pickpocket, not even the power cuts that plunged streets into darkness without warning. But this was different. It started with rumors. A cousin in another part of the city claimed to have seen something strange on his rooftop. A shadowy figure crouched low, its long arms dangling, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. The next day, a customer told Arjun she'd heard screams from a nearby block and found her brother with deep scratches down his back. By the end of the week, everyone had a story. And every story described the same thing: glowing red eyes, metallic claws, and a creature that could leap across rooftops like they were stepping stones. At first, Arjun laughed it off. Delhi was full of strange rumors. Ghost stories passed around tea stalls, warnings from old women about spirits that wandered the night. But then came the night of May 13th. The city's power grid had cut out again, leaving the streets in inky darkness. Arjun was locking up his shop when he heard something unusual. Not footsteps, but a metallic scraping, faint but sharp, like nails against a tin sheet. It seemed to echo above him. He tilted his head, squinting into the shadows where the rooftops met the sky. That's when he saw it, a silhouette, crouched low on the edge of a building across the lane. Two glowing points stared back at him from the dark. Before he could move, it leapt. Not down to the street, but across the rooftops, vanishing in seconds. The sound of scrambling feet and rattling metal faded into silence. Arjun stood frozen, heart pounding, his mind racing to make sense of what he'd seen. By the time he got home, word had already spread. Neighbors were gathered in the street, voices low but urgent. Another family had been attacked just a few blocks away. A young boy was in the clinic with deep cuts across his arm. The police had been called. That night, Arjun didn't sleep on the rooftop. None of them did. Something was out there, and whatever it was, it seemed to know exactly where to find them. 2 nights passed without incident, but the air in Arjun's neighborhood felt heavier, like the city itself was holding its breath. People still ventured out during the day, but as soon as the sun dipped low, the streets emptied. Doors slammed shut, curtains were drawn. It wasn't just fear of the creature, it was fear of the stories, each one worse than the last. On the 3rd night, Arjun sat inside his shop, long after closing, listening to the uneasy quiet. From outside came the occasional clang of a metal shutter being locked, a muffled conversation that ended quickly, the distant whine of a motorbike. The air was still, thick, and suffocating. He was about to leave when a loud knock rattled the glass door. It was Prakash, one of his oldest friends, his face pale and sweaty. He spoke in hurried whispers. "Come outside. You have to see this." Arjun followed him into the narrow lane, where a small group of men stood clustered under a flickering streetlight. They weren't talking. They were all staring up at the building across from them. Arjun's eyes followed their gaze and froze. On the rooftop, a tin water tank had been dented inward, The metal folded like it had been struck by something impossibly heavy. Beside it, deep gouges ran across the cement, 4 parallel lines as wide as a man's hand, carved into the rooftop as if by steel claws. Prakash whispered, "That wasn't here this afternoon," and nobody heard a thing. Arjun stepped closer to get a better look. The rooftop was at least 30 feet high, and the only way up was through a locked interior stairwell. No one could have carried equipment up there without being seen. The marks were clean, sharp, and deep. They didn't look like something left by a tool, they looked like something alive had made them. Before anyone could speculate further, a scream cut through the night, high-pitched, panicked, and close. Everyone turned in the same direction. It came again, this time accompanied by the sound of rapid footsteps slapping against metal and stone. They ran toward it, their sandals scraping against the pavement. The screams were coming from a narrow alley that connected their lane to the main road. But when they turned the corner, the alley was empty. Only the lingering echo of movement remained, like something had vaulted upward and out of sight. A woman appeared at the far end, clutching her arm. She was shaking, her breath coming in shallow gasps. When they reached her, she held out her forearm. 4 deep scratches ran from wrist to elbow, the skin torn and bleeding. "It came from above," she stammered. "I was carrying water and it jumped. It was so fast, I didn't even see its face, just the eyes." Her voice broke on the last word, and she glanced upward as if expecting it to return. The men helped her toward the clinic, but Arjun stayed behind for a moment, scanning the rooftops. There was nothing there, no movement, no sound, just the sweltering night pressing down on the city like a heavy blanket. When he finally returned home, he noticed something on his own rooftop. Near the water jug his family used for bathing, a single metallic claw mark gleamed in the moonlight, fresh and shallow, as if whatever had left it had only brushed the surface before moving on. It wasn't just attacking strangers anymore, it was getting closer. The next night, the heat was unbearable. The air felt thick, almost oily, clinging to the skin. Most of the neighborhood had stopped sleeping on their rooftops altogether, but a few stubborn families stayed up there, convinced that being inside in such stifling heat was worse. Arjun's own family had retreated indoors, their front door bolted and every window latched. He lay on his cot, staring at the ceiling fan as it groaned lazily overhead, when he heard it again, the metallic scrape. It was distant at first, then closer, sliding across rooftops like a predator circling its prey. He sat up, heart pounding. Before he could move, the sound was drowned out by frantic banging on the front door. His father answered to find Inspector Malhotra standing there, his uniform soaked with sweat. The man was not one for idle conversation. He marched straight in, ignoring greetings. "You've all been seeing things," he said bluntly. "Mass hysteria, that's what this is. People injuring themselves, panicking the whole city. The police have more serious crimes to deal with." Arjun bristled. "You think my neighbor scratched herself? You think people are throwing themselves off rooftops for fun?" Malhotra's expression tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and slapped it down on the table. It was a sketch, crude but chilling. A figure with hunched shoulders, long limbs, and a face that was neither fully human nor fully animal. Its eyes were 2 red dots, its mouth twisted into a grin full of sharp teeth. "This," Malhotra said, tapping the paper, "is what dozens of people claim to have seen. But no one can agree on the height, the clothing, or even if it has fur. That means people are seeing what they expect to see." Arjun leaned over the paper. "Or they're seeing something so strange they can't describe it." Malhotra shoved the paper back into his pocket, muttering about fever dreams, and left without another word. But his visit left Arjun uneasy. The inspector had come to dismiss the rumors, yet he'd been carrying a detailed sketch. Almost like he believed it, but didn't want anyone else to. By the way, if you like this story so far, please subscribe to our channel. It would mean a lot to me. I upload almost every day for you guys. Now, let's get back to the story. Later that night, Arjun joined a small patrol of neighbors. They walked the lanes with sticks and flashlights, their beams darting nervously over rooftops and alleyways. Just past midnight, a faint, rhythmic thudding made them freeze. It was coming from above, moving fast. "Rooftop," Prakash whispered, pointing. They aimed their flashlights upward, just in time to catch a glimpse, a dark figure bounding across a gap between buildings. It moved within human speed, landing on all fours before springing again. The beams caught the glint of metal where its hands should have been. They gave chase, splitting up into 2 groups to cut it off. Arjun and Prakash reached a dead-end lane, expecting to intercept it, but the rooftops above were empty. No sound, no shadow, just the oppressive stillness of the night. As they stood catching their breath, an elderly man appeared from the doorway of a crumbling building. His eyes were clouded with age, but his voice was steady. "You're chasing something you don't want to catch," he said. Arjun frowned. "What do you mean?" The old man stepped closer. "In my village, we had a night demon. It came for those who saw it twice. First, it marked you. Second, it took you. Always from above. Always. When you were alone." Prakash laughed nervously. "Stories for children." The old man didn't smile. "Tell that to the ones who vanished." He glanced at Arjun, his gaze lingering for a moment, then slipped back into the darkness of his doorway. On the way home, Arjun couldn't shake the feeling that the man's warning was meant for him. And when he climbed the stairs to his rooftop to check for damage, his stomach dropped. There, beside the shallow claw mark from before, was a second one, deeper this time, carved into the cement. It wasn't just passing through anymore, it was coming back. The night it happened, the air was so still that even the usual sounds of the city seemed to have vanished. No dogs barked, no fans hummed, no distant horns broke the silence. Arjun sat in the dim light of a kerosene lamp, flipping through an old magazine just to distract himself from the creeping unease. His family had already gone to bed, but he couldn't bring himself to sleep. It started as a faint metallic clink, like a loose pipe swaying in the wind, except there was no wind. The sound came again, sharper this time, followed by the unmistakable creak of weight shifting on a rooftop. He grabbed the flashlight and stepped out onto the narrow balcony, his pulse hammering in his ears. The lane below was empty, bathed in pale moonlight, but when he tilted the beam upward, his stomach knotted. There, perched on the rooftop directly opposite his, was a figure crouched low, its arms dangling unnaturally long. The beam caught a flash of silver, claws, long and curved, reflecting the light like polished metal. Then the eyes opened. Red, glowing, fixed directly on him. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, it leapt, not toward him, but across rooftops, vanishing from sight in seconds. Arjun's breath came in shallow gasps. He should have gone back inside, locked the door, pretended he'd seen nothing, but something compelled him to follow. He climbed the stairs to his rooftop, scanning the shadows. The heat was suffocating, pressing in from all sides. Somewhere to his left, tiles shifted with a sharp crack. He swung the flashlight in that direction, just in time to catch the creature clinging to the side of a wall, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles as it climbed. The light caught its face, and for a fraction of a second, he saw it clearly. Not entirely animal, not entirely human, its skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, its mouth curled into something between a snarl and a grin. It hissed, a metallic, rattling sound, and in one fluid motion, it launched itself straight over his head. Arjun spun, the beam catching only a blur of motion before the sound of its landing cracked through the night. From somewhere below, a scream erupted, followed by shouts and the frantic pounding of feet. Arjun bolted down the rooftop stairs, his legs barely keeping pace with his own momentum. In the lane, a young man lay sprawled on the ground, clutching his leg. Blood streaked down his shin from 4 deep, parallel gashes. Neighbors crowded around, shouting questions, waving sticks wildly into the shadows. Arjun barely noticed them. His eyes were fixed on the rooftops above, where, for just a heartbeat, he saw it again, standing perfectly still, watching the chaos below. Then, without a sound, it melted back into the night. That was the moment he understood. This thing wasn't just an intruder. It wasn't just hunting at random. It was watching them, studying them, and somehow, it had chosen him. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with a strange mix of fear and exhaustion. No one had slept. Children stayed inside, their parents too nervous to even let them play by the door. Patrol groups had doubled in size, but the air was thick with the unspoken truth. No one actually knew what they were fighting. Arjun sat on the steps outside his shop, staring at the claw marks that had deepened on his rooftop. The old man's warning echoed in his head. Marked once. Taken the second time, he was already there. That's when Prakash approached, his eyes darting up and down the street before he crouched low beside him. "I went to see my cousin in the police department," he whispered. "There's something they're not telling people. From his pocket, he pulled a thin folder, its corners creased and smudged. Inside were grainy black and white photographs, rooftops scarred with the same parallel claw marks, water tanks crushed inwards, walls gouged as if by enormous hands. But one photo froze Arjun's breath, a blurry image of the creature itself, mid-leap, its limbs stretched wide, its head snapping toward the camera. The eyes, even in low resolution, still burned red. "These are from before it reached our neighborhood," Prakash continued. "3 weeks ago, in the north of the city, the police were tracking it, but kept it quiet to avoid panic. Now it's here." Arjun's mind raced. If the thing had been moving across the city for weeks, why had no one caught it? Why had the sightings been so inconsistent? Sometimes tall, sometimes short, sometimes covered in fur, sometimes bare-skinned. Prakash tapped the photo. "My cousin said something else. Every neighborhood it visited, someone disappeared. Not killed. Just gone. No body, no sign. Like they were pulled right off the street." The words sank like a stone in Arjun's stomach. The old man's story, the marks, the second visit. It wasn't just a hunt. It was a pattern. That afternoon, Inspector Malhotra returned, this time without the bluster. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "You need to keep your family inside," he said quietly, glancing over his shoulder. "If you see it again, don't follow. Don't even look at it too long." Arjun's anger flared. "So, you do believe it exists?" Malhotra hesitated, then sighed. "Believe? I've seen the reports, the injuries, the disappearances. But what am I supposed to tell the city? That something we can't catch, can't track, and can't explain is prowling their rooftops?" He shook his head. "People panic. People die in stampedes. Fear kills faster than claws." With that, he left as abruptly as he had come, leaving Arjun with more questions than answers. By evening, the streets were nearly deserted. The few who remained outside moved quickly, avoiding eye contact, keeping their heads down. Arjun couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, just beyond the rooftops, those glowing eyes were watching. And now, he finally understood. The worst part wasn't what the monkey man was. It was what it wanted. That night, the air felt wrong. Too quiet, too still, as if the city itself was waiting. Arjun sat by the window, every light in the house switched off, trying to convince himself that the darkness would make him invisible. It was close to midnight when he heard it. Not the scrape of claws this time, but the soft, rhythmic thud of footsteps on a nearby rooftop. Slow, deliberate, moving closer. He held his breath, straining to hear. The steps stopped. Then, from just above his window, a shadow shifted. 2 points of red light blinked into existence, burning through the dark. They didn't move. They just watched. Arjun's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. He wanted to scream for his family, to run, to do anything, but the old man's warning kept him frozen. Marked once, taken the second time. Without a sound, the shadow rose to its full height. In the faint moonlight, the outline was unmistakable. Long limbs, curved claws, catching the light, a hunched silhouette that seemed almost too big to belong in this world. And then it was gone. No leap, no sound, no trace. Just the empty rooftop and the heavy, suffocating silence it left behind. When Arjun finally moved, he found something on the balcony floor. A single metallic claw mark, fresh and deep, carved into the wood right beside his chair. By morning, Prakash was gone. No one had seen him leave. His rooftop cot was still neatly folded, his front door locked from the inside. In the days that followed, the sightings stopped. The claw marks faded. The police declared the case closed. But sometimes, late at night, Arjun still feels the weight of unseen eyes watching from above, waiting for the right moment to return. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you liked it and want to listen to more, feel free to subscribe and put on your notifications. I upload almost every day. Wish you all the best.